When you find a sweet deal on a piece of land, you've got to move really quickly or else somebody else is going to grab it, especially if it's priced to sell. But right when you're putting pen to paper and you're about to finalize your offer, you notice something disturbing. 334 days on market. That's like 11 months. 11 months that property has been on the market, that other buyers have looked at that property at that exact price and decided that they were not going to buy it. And now there's you. That land hasn't sold for a reason. And before you make that offer as a buyer, you have to figure out exactly what that reason is, or else the risk is that you're going to buy a piece of land that you can't use and you might even lose money in the process, and we don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at a number of listings on the market for sale right now, land that should have sold by now but is still on the market. And I'm going to peel back the curtain and show you the reason why that land hasn't sold so that you can avoid making that mistake for yourself when you buy the land that you want at the right price. So let's get started. This first listing comes to us from Watha, North Carolina. This is 15.5 acres available for sale right now at $164,900. And this listing has been on the market for 334 days. But why? It actually looks like a really well-staged property from the standpoint of building a future home on acreage. And yet it hasn't sold. The reason this property hasn't sold is because it's landlocked. That's right, you actually cannot access that property without illegally trespassing on your neighbor's land. Now, if you're paying attention, you may be noticing, hey, Alex, what about that street sign? It's on Brinkley Lane, and Brinkley Lane has a street sign out front on the county road like you can see here. Well, the problem is when you actually look on the county maps, and you toggle on the easement filter, what you can see is that an easement shows up across the street, but not on Brinkley Lane. And the reason why the easement doesn't show up on Brinkley Lane is because there is none. And checking the deed for the subject property, I was able to confirm that there is no legal access to that property. So here's how the conversation goes when the potential buyer calls the listing agent to ask about that property. They say, hey man, cool property, like the property, I want to make an offer today. But before I do, quick question, how does that access work? I couldn't find an easement on file with the county. And the agent's like, yeah, man, it's a farm road. The farmer uses it. And there's a couple neighbors back there too. You know, we haven't found the easement on file with the county, but it's probably fine. And they're using it. There's no big deal. You know, it's probably fine if you use it too. Click. They never talk again. And the agent is waving their hands, trying to sell this thing that they know is probably not going to sell, because it doesn't have insurable access, which means you can't get a bank loan from a bank lender, and it's probably not going to sell this year or next, and certainly if it does, it's not going to be at $165,000. This next one comes to us from Interlachen, Florida. This is a 15-acre listing that's available for sale at $160,000 that has had 221 days on market. The listing description says, the land offers a great opportunity for agricultural use or building your dream home with minimal wetlands and over 600 feet of road frontage. Minimal wetlands. Minimal. Guys, barely any wetlands at all. See, the thing that this listing agent might be missing is just because the wetlands aren't mapped on the county or federal maps does not mean that the soil on that land isn't wet, because you bet your bottom dollar that it is. In fact, when you want to know where the wetlands is, just a pro tip, especially if you're using a county satellite mapping tool, zoom out. When you start zooming out, it kind of becomes hard to miss because you see this big blotch of wet land where there's very low density, if any development at all, and all the development has somehow avoided this area. And it's not a coincidence. And if you're there at home wondering why wet soil matters, because, hey man, who cares? It's a nice property. It's got good access. Well, the reason why it matters is because if you have soil that's wet, then you can't build a septic. And when you go on the county soil maps, you can see further evidence, because if you actually look, the soil series is, I believe it says Pomona fine sand. So you have a sandy soil, but the subclass is subclass W. And you guess what W stands for? Water. Yeah, that's got a high water table at that location, which means that you're not going to have soil with enough drainage in it to install a septic system. What that means is that you cannot use that property as a future home site for a home. So at $160,000, that wipes out the majority of the market value of that property. And for that reason, I'm out. Now, this next listing is 12.1 acres available for sale right now in Winlock, Washington. This is a property that is listed at $1.3 million today, has been on the market for 258 days and hasn't sold. The listing description says, investor alert, multifamily parcels. There are water and sewer hookups, which means that you're in the city, which means you do have municipal utilities at this location. But the question is, why hasn't it sold? I mean, it's a nice property. It's in a really nice area. You have good acreage, but why hasn't it sold? I mean, it's been on the market for going on a year. What gives? Well, sometimes when you're looking for an answer and you can't find it, the reason you can't find the answer is because you're looking too hard. The reason that this property hasn't sold is because it's overpriced. See, similar acreage that has sold around the area that is 10, 12, 15 acres has sold between $200,000 and $300,000. And these are properties that in many cases have better access than the subject property that we're actually looking at. And despite that, this property has been listed for going on a year at $1.3 million. If you're paying close attention, you might be thinking, hey, Alex, not so fast, man. Look at the bottom of the listing. It says the city of Winlock can build out Rice Street to access the properties, which means that if the city extends that road, then you have all those building lots. You can sell them all separate, and you can make a lot more money than if you had to install the road yourself because the city's going to do it. My response is don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath because it's probably not going to happen. And a lot of people go back and forth on this, and I talk to sellers that get a little bit confused on this because what they say is, Alex, no, you're wrong. I talked to the city. They said it's in the city. The city's responsible for the roads. And that's a city road right there that needs to be extended, and they're going to extend it at their cost. And my rebuttal to that is, no, they're not. They don't have to, and they won't. Because the city in this case, like any other city, is a city that has financial constraints. So the people that think that the city is somehow this panacea, it's like an endless resource for the benefit of private real estate investors that is going to install this road system and extend all the utilities into this subdivision to the cost of $200,000 or $300,000 for you, for your profitable real estate deal, just to go well, just because they're trying to do business in the city, and so they want to hook you up. Then after they pay all those expenses of improving the roads and the utilities, the idea is that after that they're also going to pay to maintain those roads for your benefit as well. Look, there are cases when the city will participate in some of the improvement cost of road systems in certain development scenarios, yes. But more often than not, they're not going to participate at all. And what they're likely to do here is tell the developer what their standards are for that road. So the developer, at the developer's expense, can extend that road and improve the road to the city standard. And only then, only at that point will the city maintain the road at their expense after you have built it. See, the seller is believing their own mythology on this one because what the seller is doing is they're looking at the zoning, they're looking at the location, and they're focusing in on the positive attributes. And they're seeing, look, it's 12.1 acres. This 12.1 acres, you can build over 100 apartments. Those 100 apartments might be worth $250,000 a piece, which means that the finished development is going to be worth $25 million, which means that my land is worth $100,000 per acre. It's a giveaway. I can't give you any more money, buyer, because you're going to make so much money on this development. I have no more money to give you. See, they're so focused on all the positive things about this potential development scenario that they've been playing through in their mind that they're forgetting the very basic fact that this is a rural town with 1,500 local citizens. where there's absolutely no demand for 100 additional apartment units at that location. There's no demand. The reason you know that is you can look a quarter mile down the road and there's a new residential development subdivision where there's 26 homes listed for sale, overpriced by the way. They're not selling. They're not clearing through the inventory of all those homes. So do you really think that another 100 housing units in this backstreet rural location is really going to be a winning ticket for a future developer? I don't think so. But you know what? That's fine, because it doesn't have to be. Because this property is a great property for a single home site, a rural home site for a single home on acreage. And with that type of use, that property could be worth $200,000 to $300,000. And I think at that price, it would sell quickly, but not at $1.3 million, not anytime soon. But what happens if you realize all this stuff after you've already made an offer on a piece of land that the seller's accepted and you realize, oh no, I'm in the process of overpaying? That's what the next video is going to cover on our channel, because this video is going to show you how to negotiate the lowest price possible on a piece of land when you uncover unflattering findings that impact the value of that land. Don't give up too soon, because you can actually get a better deal when you find the issue than you ever thought you could before.